All right, folks. Today we're going to discuss what I think is, I think it's a little bit more academic than what I wanted. I try to keep these things very, very practical, and this discussion is very practical, but it's probably our most sort of academic, the most academic training. And I think I've actually decided to kind of divide it into two parts because there's a little bit of this that I'd like to take a little bit more time on. What we're going to talk about today is some of the foundational things that I feel like everybody really needs to know in order to be successful long term. Just the basics of like just nutrition 101, basically how does food affect your body. So we can see my screen. I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into this. This shouldn't take too long. I've got a little bit of homework for you at the end of this that you can communicate with me on that'll help you learn more and just like apply what we're talking about. Today, we're talking about consuming high quality protein, defining what that is and why that's important. But a quick, and then remember the challenge goal for this 2 weeks is I want you to consume high quality protein twice per day. The best sources for high quality protein are lean meat and a protein supplement like the whey powder that I've sent out. Those behaviorally, like the protein supplement is just really easy. It's something you can stick with long term, and it actually really is really good for you. And then the lean meats, I do think I'm not going to talk about meat this whole time, but really lean meat is pretty much the most nutrient dense food on the planet. And a lot of times it gets sort of knocked as like people very often say, yeah, I've been trying to eat clean, eat better, and I've taken out meat. When really I think lean meat really is super nutritious, maybe the most nutritious food there is. So remember, that's your challenge goal. We're going to talk about why that is and how we're going to make it happen. So a quick review of the last training we did. A lot of people sent me emails that they watched that recording, so I'm glad that was helpful for y'all. But the big takeaway from the last training is that your body is composed of two parts. You basically got fat mass and you've got everything else. And everything else in your body is what we call lean mass. Lean mass consists of all functional body tissues. And so if you're struggling with weight loss or you feel like your health isn't where you want it to be, or maybe you've regained weight, we need to learn to think intelligently about your lean mass. Sometimes people gain weight and it's not a problem at all. They're actually just getting healthier. They're getting stronger. It's actually possible to be gaining weight while you're losing fat if you're gaining lean mass. So if you're in the middle of weight regain or you've experienced weight regain in the past, I want you to think in terms of fat mass and lean mass. Last discussion, we talked about how strength training builds and maintains lean mass. And then we said that your goal should be, whether you know this or not, or you put it in these terms or not, your goal should be more lean mass with less fat mass. I don't care so much about weight loss as much as we're talking about your body composition. And healthy weight loss can be part of the less fat mass part of that cycle, but I want you to be able to think in both of those terms. So remember, we got this oil and water here. This is how we measure and take your body composition. Just a reminder, lean mass is not just muscle, it's bone, tendons, ligaments, organs, body water. What I want you to think through is when you eat, every little bit of food that you eat either goes to fuel fat mass or it goes to fuel lean mass. And so this is where protein becomes super important. The two behaviors to take care of your lean mass are strength training and eating quality protein. And if you go back to this list, all of these things, lean mass, everything on this list and more is going to be fueled by the protein that you're eating. So sometimes when I work with clients, I have them build their protein up and it seems like a lot of protein. They're like, why would I eat that much protein? That's a lot more than I've eaten in the past. And it's because the substrate to build tendons, muscles, bones, ligaments, all your organs is going to come pretty much exclusively from your protein. So this is why it's so important to get quality protein in your diet. Real quick, I want to talk about just what food is. This isn't like a big philosophical question. Just this is purely practical. You can divide food pretty much into two categories. You can actually say the third component of food has water. But basically, you've got micronutrients and you've got macronutrients. Micronutrients are the things that we often think about when we think of like a healthy food. Like when people say, I'm eating spinach. They know that spinach has things like zinc, magnesium, calcium, vitamins and minerals. Those are micronutrients, and we need to get micronutrients to be really healthy. But primarily, we actually need to talk about your macronutrients. These are the foods that you eat in large quantities. And this is really a huge piece of your nutrition. We very often don't talk about macronutrients. We need to start talking about macronutrients. The same way you need like calcium for strong bones and stuff, like you need protein, carbs, fats to live. Pretty much, with the exception, you don't technically need carbs to live, but you have to eat protein, you have to eat fats, and you got to get them in pretty large amounts to live. We are going to talk about macronutrients today. Alcohol is a macronutrient, sort of. We don't need it, but the biggest thing that's important to know about your macronutrients is that the macronutrients you eat make up all the calories of your day. So when you talk about like 2,000 calories, or I'm on a 1,200 calorie diet, those calories are determined by the macronutrients you're eating. Zinc, magnesium, all those nutrients, vitamins, and minerals do not contribute calories. When we talk about calories, we're talking about those all come from your macronutrients. Most people are eating food every day, but they don't really understand the breakdown of their proteins, fats, and carbs. And they definitely don't understand how their proteins, fats, and carbs are going to contribute to an improving and healthy body composition, like I'm talking about here, with more lean mass, less fat mass. Most people know, I said this last training, but most people know when they have too much fat on their body. Most people don't recognize when they don't have enough lean mass on their body. So I want everybody to be able to think through and identify how their body feels and like sort of the percentage and proportion that they're carrying around this fat mass and lean mass. And the question is, are you doing behaviors that are going to contribute to healthy lean mass? And are you not doing behaviors that are going to contribute to a healthy supply of fat mass? So the macronutrients can make up all the calories in your body. This is where we're doing a little bit of sort of homework. This is where it's a little bit more academic, but I do think this is going to be really important. So I wanted to take a few minutes to show this. What these numbers are is these are the calories per gram of the macronutrients. So is anybody seeing your food label? Anytime you eat a food, you have food labels, right? And it has listed on the back of those food labels the grams of your fats, carbs, and protein. And so I want to show you what that is. I want to teach you how to read a food label, and so you can make more informed decisions while you eat, and then so you can eat in a way that's going to contribute to more lean mass and less fat mass. So I'll show you some of the details, and then I'll just zoom out and show you the big picture. So basically, per gram of protein, you have 4 calories, and carbs are the same. So carbs and protein, if you eat a gram of those, you get 4 calories. Per gram of fat, you get 9 calories. And then per gram of alcohol, you get 7 calories. So you've seen like commercials for Michelob Ultra, and it's like, we've only got 2 carbs in a Michelob Ultra. That doesn't mean it's a 0-calorie beer, because you're still getting 100 calories roughly from alcohol in like a Michelob Ultra or in a beer. So alcohol itself has a calorie value. Fats, carbs, and protein end up being the same. So the big takeaway here is fat is twice as calorically dense as protein. Okay, I don't want to bore you. I'm going to tell you why this matters. I'm going to tell you how you apply this to your life. Most people in the American culture, this is their typical calorie breakdown. So I'm not really even commenting on how many calories you're eating here. Some people are eating a lot of calories, 3,000 calories. Some people are not eating that many calories at all. They're eating 1,200 calories. But the percentage breakdown of calories coming from their macronutrients, this is very, very typical for most people. Almost every client that I work with, when we actually look at what they're eating, this is the approximate breakdown. 12% of their calories are coming from protein. And roughly, you could change these numbers around, but basically you could say 88% of their calories are coming from fats or carbs. Some people are eating a little bit more from fat, some people a little bit more from carbs, but in general, right around 10% is coming from protein, and everything else is coming from fats and carbs. Why is that? Why is it that people in New England that I work with, people in Portland, Oregon, or people in Knoxville all have pretty much the same breakdown? Well, it turns out restaurants, protein's more expensive, so restaurants don't serve you that much protein. Also, fats are really delicious, so they serve you a lot of fats. And carbs are really cheap. And so if a restaurant knows what they're doing, they're not going to serve you that much protein, and they're going to deep fry carbs in a bunch of fat. So what that leads to is a composition that most of the food that we're eating is fats and carbs. If you go to a potluck and you're eating spinach artichoke dip with chips, that is, probably less than 10% from protein, and that's you're eating fats and carbs. If you're eating a cheeseburger, fats and carbs. French fries, fats and carbs. Burritos, it's like, yeah, sometimes they're going to have meat in burritos, but they're usually going to have a fatty meat. There's going to be a lot of cheese. There's going to be a tortilla, beans, rice. That's fats and carbs. Barbecue, you're eating a piece of fatty pork with a bunch of sugar sauce on it. So it doesn't really matter like what kind of food you're eating. If you're at a restaurant, you're at a potluck, anything like that, this is the basic breakdown of what that's going to be. This is pretty much the first goal I have for almost all my clients. And this is no matter where you're starting in the world, if you want to improve your nutrition, this would be like the first place I would point to. I don't necessarily care how much calories you're eating. I don't, whether you want to lose weight, whether you want to just feel better and have more energy throughout the day, or you want to perform better in the gym. I want to take the composition of your diet and take it from, roughly this like 12% protein, and let's get you almost doubling your protein. So let's turn up the dial on the amount of protein you're eating. And the way that most people are going to be able to do that is by what we talked about, which is consuming high quality protein by eating a lean meat and a protein powder. If you just do that, you will turn the dial on your diet from something like this to something like this. And this is going to make a huge difference. It's going to make a huge difference because think about all of, I'll go back and show you all of these pieces of your body: muscles, bones, tendons, ligaments, organs, body water. That takes a lot of fuel. And if you're eating 12% of your diet is from protein, you're not going to have enough to fuel that lean mass. So the big reason for this, why do we want to increase the diet, regardless of increasing or decreasing your calories, why do we want to increase the percentage of your diet coming from protein? It's because protein breaks down into lean mass. If you eat a big chicken breast, that's strictly just going to pretty much go to your bones and muscles and tendons and ligaments in your brain and your organs. If you eat excess protein, it's actually pretty darn hard to eat excess protein. Like protein has a very, very hard time turning into fat. People can eat just gobs and gobs of protein, and they don't ever increase their fat mass. However, carbs and fats are pretty much just used as energy in your body. And the minute you eat more energy from carbs and fats than you can use, they're easily stored as fat. There's tons of debates over a low carb diet versus a low fat diet. And in general, for people with metabolic disease, a low carb diet is preferential. But the bottom line is, if you overeat protein, it's going to be really, really hard to consistently overeat protein. It's very hard to store from fat. It's pretty darn easy in the American diet to overeat carbs and fats and to store the rest of that as fat. So if you turn the dial up on your protein, even if you don't decrease your calories, you're much more likely to become leaner, to become stronger, to become fitter, and much less likely to store fat at your belly. Especially if you pair that with doing some strength training regularly, your body composition will improve, especially if it's vigorous strength training. Okay, any questions on that? I want to give y'all just a second. We understand calories coming from macronutrients. We're going to build that at the end, and I'm going to show you how to read your food labels pretty easily. Any questions? Great. Thumbs up. Love it. Okay, so now it comes to how do we actually consistently eat quality protein. I'm not gonna lie, it is a little bit uncomfortable if you've been eating 10-12% of your diet from protein. to start to dial that up. At the beginning in particular, it can be a little bit uncomfortable just because it's new. Protein also doesn't taste really good by itself. Protein tastes okay if it's paired with, carbs, deep fried, and fat. But so protein is very satiating. It'll make you feel full. Sometimes people would say, like, I just can't eat that much protein. But if you slowly walk that protein up and you slowly, sustainably build that into your lifestyle, it's easily doable. So a couple of tips. I want you to incorporate lean meats into your diet. I've got a list of lean meats right here that I'll take you through in just a second. Feel free to pull up your phone and snap a picture of that. But we're going to incorporate lean meats in your diet. Supplement with a protein powder that's super easy. That's a sustainable behavior you can stick with for 10 years. You don't have to do it every day, but I would encourage you at least every day you're working out, get a supplement of protein powder. Protein powders have been studied extensively, and they just always show a benefit. So there's no reason not to supplement with protein powder unless you have some kind of gut digestive reaction to it, which about 10% of people do. So if you're fine with protein powder, go ahead, start supplementing with it consistently. I would encourage you to start small, but continually learn to prioritize protein in your diet. And then the fourth thing is actually just to learn to identify protein sources. Very, very often, people think they're eating more protein than they are because they're misidentifying protein sources. If you've slipped up on your diet, you've started to gain back more weight, you are having a hard time getting stronger in the gym, a huge reason for that is because you could be eating fattier things that you think are proteins. So first, I encourage you to pull out your phone, snap a picture of this list of lean meats. I'll give you just a second if you're watching the recording or if you're live. These are the big bulk of your lean meats. White fish, salmon, lean ground beef. I almost always buy 80-20 and drain the fat off of it while I'm sauteing it. Tuna canned, or whether it's a tuna steak, chicken breast, thighs a little bit fattier, but it's still a lean meat. Pork tenderloin is a great one. It's a great one to kind of change up your routine with. It's not super expensive. It can be really, really good. Shrimp, and then lean steaks, the cheaper cuts of steak are all generally lean. Okay, misidentifying protein sources, which are actually fat sources, is a huge issue that we see very, very often. Eggs are actually 5 grams of protein and 5 grams of fat and 6 grams of protein. So by weight, eggs have more protein than fat. But remember, if you go back up here, fat has 9 calories per gram and protein. So it's roughly twice as many calories per gram of fat than protein. So if you have 5 grams of fat and 6 grams of protein, you're getting most of your calories in an egg from fat. Bacon has like a strip of bacon is usually going to have like 2 grams of protein and like 6 to 8 grams of fat. So it's not a protein source at all. It's fatty, which is why it's so delicious. It's fatty steaks, like a ribeye. We actually had some ribeyes last night. Those are very fatty, especially if you're eating them in a restaurant and putting, they're drizzling butter on top of it, and then you're eating it with mashed potatoes with a ton of butter in it. Those are going to be fatty ground beef. So if you eat like a 70-30 ground beef or a 75-25 ground beef, that's actually going to be really, really fatty. They count the water as lean mass there. So it's, if you actually look at the ingredient label on a fatty ground beef like that, it's very, very fatty. It's actually got like less than 30% of that is protein. Pork, oftentimes, like if you're eating barbecue, pork ribs, pork butt, that's gonna be very fatty. Hamburgers and hot dogs generally have like 2 grams of protein and 10 grams of fat. And then again, anything from a restaurant, even if you think, oh, I'm getting a protein at a restaurant, in general, it's just gonna be very fatty. So what I want you to think about is, what are some practical ways that you can dial up the protein in your diet, irregardless of where your calories are, irregardless of what your goals are? Simply doing that will improve your body composition. If you do that and combine it with training, you stick with that, it will improve, and you should be able to notice those improvements. But the last thing I want to do is I wanted to take just a second to look at a typical food label. This is kind of fun to do because I see this all the time. a product is being advertised as a protein. So I took a screenshot I looked up the first protein breakfast burrito I could find online. I also saw like a protein power nut mix, and I looked at the ingredients on the back. So what I want you to notice here is we've got 16 grams of fat, and it'll advertise, hey, 19 grams of protein. It's like, oh, hey, 19 grams of protein, that's a lot. But so if we do this, 16 grams come from fat, 30 grams come from carbs, and 19 grams come from protein. So roughly, I'm just going to do some very fast math, and I want to just show you. I want to show you how you can kind of just learn like the protein composition of your diet. So remember, the calories over here, the 340 calories, that's going to be, if we multiply 16 grams of fat times 9, because it's 9 calories per gram, and then 30 grams of carbs times 4, and then 19 times 4, it would come up to be something like 340. It'd be very, very close. So I'll just do that just to double check real quick. So 16 times 9 equals 144 calories are coming from fat. 30 times 4 is 120. 19 times 4. Now I'm going to add it all up. And I got that number right on the dot. So that's where calories come from. That's how you know what that is. So now I'm going to do a quick percentage. So 19 times 4. So 76 of the 340 calories are coming from protein. So this is roughly, if I can remember how to do this, 21% of this burrito is coming from protein. So if you're buying this burrito, now I told you I want about 20% of your food to come from protein. So this wouldn't be like the worst choice ever, but if you're buying this burrito for protein, it's not that high of a protein percentage. So you can see that there's a difference between what's being advertised and what the reality actually is. So if you can you don't need to do that math every time you're doing this. All I do when I look at a food label is I say, remember, if fat and protein are equal, there's going to be about twice as many calories coming from fat, and then carbs and protein are like a 1-to-1 ratio. So I can say, hey, there's almost twice as many carbs as protein, and there's almost twice as much fat as protein. And so I can say, hey, that's not a great protein source for me. Plus, 340 calories, it's a lot of calories for that little protein. So one piece of homework that I would open up my email to, because this is great. On the last training, I gave people the option to email me something they'd like to be held accountable for through this week. I got a lot of responses on that, so that was awesome. I'm about to go through and respond to all those again at some point today. But what I would like you to do is I want you to take a picture of a food label, something that you eat regularly or something that you purchased recently. And I want you to email me that food label and tell me, what are your thoughts? Roughly what percentage of the macro composition is it? So you look here and you say, hey, roughly, just tell me right off the top of your head, is this a good protein source? Is it a poor protein source? Is there a lot of fat in this? Is this a very high carb, maybe a very high sugar product? So I want to get your thoughts on that. And then I want you to tell me if it's in line with your current goals. So a good example of this could be, hey, you told me you wanted me to eat more protein. So I went to eat eggs this morning, and I noticed that eggs actually are a little bit lower protein than I thought. And so I learned something, or is there a better thing that I can add to my breakfast that's higher protein? I'll give you a response on that. So I would love for you to kind of just embrace this homework, learning how to roughly do a food label like that. I promise it seems like it's math. I'm the worst math guy on planet Earth, but I promise if you learn some of those basic skills, they'll stick with you for the rest of your life, and you're going to make a lot better decisions about how you eat and the foods that you reach for. You'll also start to recognize what foods, maybe higher fat foods, make you feel tired or lethargic, or maybe higher carb foods make your energy go way up and down throughout the day. But so if you were able to learn about how to prioritize protein in your diet, you're able to institute a couple of simple habits in there. If you're able to pair that with some intense strength training, I promise your water glass is going to look a lot more like this you're going to be able to switch the balance towards more lean mass, towards less fat. It's going to be great for your health. It's going to be great for your daily energy. It's going to be great for your longevity. So I'd love for you guys to take me up on this homework. I'd love to go through my email for a couple hours to do that. So wherever you are, if you're watching this recording, if you're on live, I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, we'll be in touch. Keep posting those protein sources in the Facebook group. People have said that's been really encouraging. So thanks everybody for diving in on that. I will pause the recording just a second, but are there any questions that anyone wants to jump in and ask real quick? I'll go ahead and stop the recording just for those watching it at home.